We're just all sitting here.
We're handling some email stuff on my end. Yes.
Was it like, oh my god, we're online?
Yes. Hello, internet. This is a show on Tuesday. I am Tim CK, your host. Well, one half of the hosting. I'm the verbal hosting. The technical hosting today is handled by one Mr. Aaron Humphreys.
Which means the show is going to just be a train wreck, but we'll go forward.
Yes.
A forward
station
moving
already
train.
is a train wreck.
I know.
And we are joined by Mackenzie Wortman.
Hello.
Queen Mackenzie.
Yes.
Queen, that's right.
You should rewrite that in your little tagline.
I know, right?
I should.
The
Queen
Queen.
Mackenzie.
Queen Mackenzie.
Or
Yeah.
the Queen.
The Queen. I was
The
going
Queen.
to put on mine Jose better than Mackenzie Fuentes, but I didn't think
Yeah,
it'd be
but
the
like,
room.
it's whatever to make you able to sleep at night. We all know the truth.
And we're also joined by Jose Fuentes.
Yeah, that's me. I know that guy.
Second best.
Second best.
I mean, we'll let any rabble in here, I guess. Even punks, like
That's
Jose.
right.
Oh, Mr. Well, I'm cool because I wear Moon Knight shirts and stuff. Because I'm.
I am wearing a Moon Knight shirt.
Yeah, I know.
I brought Darth Vader.
Right?
He did.
Well, I'm wearing a U.S. snowboarding shirt, but I have a bunch of Destiny merch on my walls there.
Yeah, you have nerd stuff in the back.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. So we are your Silverline Tuesday crew, and we're talking about fantasy stuff in comics, something we're all very well acquainted with, and the fantastical world building, storytelling, all that good stuff.
yeah.
Before I jump into it, anybody read, watch, play, do anything exciting of interest? Anything pique your creative muse?
No, still playing.
I've been on
Horizon.
jury duty.
Ooh,
That sounds exciting.
yeah.
I've been
Depends on the crime.
playing Horizon Zero
That's cool.
Dawn in the Gear series. I'm reading a book called Noctera, which is, I think it's an image book. It's done by Scott Snyder and Tony S. Daniel. So far, it's pretty cool.
Nice.
I went on Free Comic Book Day, and one store is doing a half off everything in the store, so I got a whole bunch of crap to read.
Nice.
So
Alright.
that was. I don't know if that was from the sale, but I got a whole stack of stuff. So yeah, so far it's pretty cool. I like that one. As far as movies, I saw the Everything Everywhere movie.
Oh yeah, I've heard really good things about that.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
It was a little. I think it kind of overstayed its welcome in some areas. Like pretty soon, I was like, okay, I get it. But overall, like, we didn't realize it was like 2.5 hour movie. It's a long movie. I didn't realize it was that long. I remember I grew up when most movies are an hour and a half. These 2 hour movies, I'm like, getting into the into the 2 hour mark. I'm like, doesn't this thing ever end?
Ever
You
since
get
they said
you get
enough.
into that third bucket of popcorn.
Yeah.
Ever since the extended Lord of the Rings, movies are 3 hour minimum for me now.
Yeah. It's well, those are extended 4 hour. Lord of the Rings are 4 hours.
Return of the King is extended. Well, let's say its Fellowship got pushed out to 2:45. Two Towers is like 3.5, and I want to say Return of the King is about 4 hours.
Yeah, I think Return of the King got the most added to it.
But
Yeah.
You like to watch movies with like a crap ton of content, though.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, but the thing of the Lord of the Rings movies, you can just watch them in bits and pieces. Watch it for 30 minutes, go do something, come back the next day. I mean, and so yeah, I like the movie. There were some he kept doing these montages, and by like the 10th montage, I'm like, okay,
I'm
we
over
get
it.
it. I'm kind of done with that. Get it, got it. Yeah, and that's kind of it. I mean, I'm like I said, still trying to play through Horizon since every game was a bajillion years. 6 months later, I'll be starting the second Horizon. It's not Forbidden West. I think that's what it is. So,
I'll say I have not played any of those.
they're pretty cool.
They're I like the I didn't play the first one because I didn't have a PlayStation, but now that it's on Steam, I should, because I like the extreme form of retrofuturism. I like the idea of, post-apocalyptic primitivism.
Yeah.
Primitivism? Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. There's still something weird, like in the game, you hunt the robotic animals, but you still hunt real animals. And and like the only way to upgrade certain things is to kill real animals. But I always feel bad when it's trying to run away from me and I kill it, even though it's not real. There's something about like but you need it to upgrade your stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay. But pretty soon it's funny because you're playing that game and I'm taking out entire herds of creatures. I mean, I'm a one-man extinction event.
Right.
Extinction event. Like I'm just going through and slaughtering. I mean, you just watch the population decline like nobody's business in that game. If you could actually point to like, why are these animals going extinct? Because of her. She's killing everything. Oh, it's And so I'm like, there's a part of me it's like I understand it's a game, but I'm like, good God. She's like, it's weird because she's like, I'm the hero, and I'm like this altruistic good person. I help my fellow man by just slaughtering every living thing within a 10-yard radius of me.
That sounds like human race to me.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they're like, that sounds good. I mean, what's the problem there, right? I mean, even though they're machines or whatever, still. They kind of have an explanation. Like even my friend Tom read the that art book, and he's like, "Yeah, I played it. I had my own idea of how the machines came into it, and when they told me the reason why, I'm like, it's kind of dumb." So I'm like, I still like it, but I'm like, no, I like my idea better. I've had that with a few movies where I'm like, this movie's cool. Then I find that the idea they wanted that like I think would be cool, they did the opposite. I'm like, no, that movie's dumb to me. I don't want to watch it. I've done that before.
That's how I know there's a good chance I'm going to enjoy the movie when my wife finishes the movie and she's like, that was dumb. So, all right.
Yeah.
Now it's time for me to watch it.
Well, my friend Juan, he actually will recommend movies that he doesn't like. He's done that. He's like, I hated this movie. He's like, you'd probably like it, Aaron. And same vice versa. We actually recommend movies we hate to each other because we just assume we're going to like the opposite.
Yeah.
So.
My wife is a huge psychological thriller fan. So like Saw and other stuff of that nature.
Yeah. So I don't know. I usually just pick the most, the one person you never considered doing it, and that's the one who usually did it. It did like a murder mystery.
Right.
Mysteries are there was one show where they actually threw me, and I gave him props. The obvious guy who, obviously he's the one who did it, but that can't be right. It was him. I was like, oh, that was a trick. Because usually it's like the one you don't like. He's too obvious, and he did do it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's all right. I give you props. There was one where I literally didn't think, like, I chose this person. I was like, oh, I guess you didn't do it. At the very end, she like comes with like the last 2 minutes. I'm the one that did the deed, and I'm like, I knew it. I knew it was her.
I knew it.
It's always got to be the one you don't suspect. So it was almost kind of a bummer.
One of you is Kaiser Sose?
Yeah, it's like I knew it. So, have you been reading or watching anything cool, Tim?
I have been mostly painting and playing tabletop war games. I had a Lord of the Rings tournament on
that's cool.
Saturday.
Ooh,
so
pretty.
That was for the figures that you painted, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you just showed them here.
Yeah, so I'm coming about middle of the pack with my Men of Minas Tirith.
Did you win?
I was middle of the pack. I won one game, scored points to almost draw another one, and then got tabled by the Serpent Horde and Black Corsairs. Which kind of makes sense canonically, since that's the Black Numenorians, the ones who fell to Sauron in the Second Age.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep. Actually, no, to Melkor in the First Age. My bad. As if everyone is familiar with the ages of Lord of the Rings.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know which age, but I know what you were talking about.
Yes.
I don't, but I smile.
Perfect, yes.
Yes!
Yeah, sure. I know what you're talking about.
But now that I've finished up my Lord of the Rings, I'm moving back to my beloved Warhammer. Yes.
Yeah.
Much more space to work with. Also, much more skulls.
Much more
skulls. Well,
skulls
are important.
Yes, everything needs skulls.
So,
I'm sorry.
Aaron, can I ask a question?
What?
Why is that Silverline poster behind you so crooked?
Because I wanted it that way. You never
It's
hang.
really
You never
driving
hang.
me nuts.
Is it? Because I'll hang stuff crooked like that on purpose. Yeah, it's on purpose. Good. Then I know what to get.
Oh my god!
Like,
I'm gonna fly over there just to fix it.
Mackenzie's OCD starting to short her out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never put posters
like
up
the-
crooked like that.
No.
You never put posters up like that. Oh, I do that.
I don't
sometimes.
believe she lived in the 90s like we
Yeah.
did.
They used to do that stuff all the time. Yeah. Just to torture you. I mean,
I remember that being a thing. You know, you put a couple posters up and then you cockeye one.
I'm gonna hold his hand just to get
well,
through
here I can. Let me see here. Here I have these Wonder Woman posters over here. See how they're crooked? One's higher than the other.
Oh, that's different. That's
Oh my
design.
god.
See,
That
see?
would not be hard.
She's like, no, they all have to be even, right? Yeah. No.
Ugh.
There, I took it out of your eyesight. Now you can't see it.
Well, mine are straight.
They look straight.
And
if that's what you
measured
want
out.
to tell me.
They are. Measured out. Everything's perfect. To the exact centimeter. I made my dad measure everything out.
So you don't just
I do not hang with my heart.
There is not organized chaos in her life.
So tell me, Mackenzie, do your shoes touch at night when you go to sleep?
Do they
You
touch?
know, there's a reason I fell down the steps, and I thought I'd get some pity, some niceness out of you, knowing that I fell down a flight of steps and very much injured myself. But I came back, and it's just I fell down them again.
Ooh.
Well, more like I pushed you, but
Yeah.
What was it?
Like,
There was a shirt that was one of my favorite shirts. I almost bought it for myself. It was like basically, britches or be tripping. And he's like, okay, maybe I tripped a few. And there's something funny about that. Like, so you got to tell us about how long? What were you doing with the stairs? Were you carrying one of your dinosaurs and missed a step, or?
No, they are the stairs I go down every single day, my entire life. And my mom yelled for me because we're having renovations in our house.
Yeah.
So they're in the basement, and I was in my bedroom. My mom called me, and she's like, "Hey, can you come downstairs for a second?" And I walked out of my bedroom, took the 10 steps to the steps, made the left like I always do, took a step down, and my feet just went out from under me. I slid and fell all the way down 12 steps.
so what happened was she was going up the stairs, and the stairs goes, psych!
Yeah,
I know.
I told Jose that I swooned too hard because Hayden Christensen was at the bottom.
Was that it? Did you think
I
maybe
wish.
Do you think the stairs just got tired of you stepping all over?
I think so. That has to be the reason. But it showed me that maybe my soulmate and I are meant to be, because not a day after that happened, the construction workers knocked over this guy right here, and that's why he's in my bedroom. So I was like, oh, I fell, then my love fell.
That's true. You need to get a Hayden Christensen like a mask or something so you can take the helmet off and it's him underneath.
I have like 2 Hayden Christensen, Anakin Skywalker cardboard cutouts. So
I laughed for a good solid 5 minutes when you told us you fell down the stairs.
I really did.
I felt a little bad when you showed us the Bruce.
It was really bad.
It was really
bad. You did. Yeah, you took pictures of the bruise, and I'm like, man, those stairs don't mess around. What'd you say to him?
No, well, and the thing is, they're like the basement steps, so they're just like really, really hard plywood.
Ooh, okay, so there's no
carpet.
I
just fell down every single one of them, and I'm telling you, my mom was crying. She thought I broke my neck because she was like, "Are you okay?" I didn't answer because it was like sheer pain, and everyone kind of laughed because they're like, "Oh yeah, Mackenzie fell down the stairs. That sounds like her." And then people saw like my back and my leg and my arm, and they're like, "Oh shit, harder. You really fell." Like,
and they laughed even harder. Those bastards.
My pride hurts worse.
America's Funniest Home Videos. Right. And we missed it.
I know.
You could have said it could have been on video. For some odd reason, I keep thinking of like Family Guy when what's his name keeps falling down the stairs all the time.
That's what it felt like.
Peter, yeah. There was one where he kept falling down. I can't remember the episode, but like it was like the stairs are greased, and he kept trying to go down the stairs, and he continuously kept falling down them. There was like, so,
Yeah.
I'll think of you.
These steps are at like a really bad angle, so they're not like gradual steps. They're like at an angle. Yeah. And I'm usually fine with them. I go down them every single day. And I was like, if I would have died on those steps, I would have haunted the freaking ass out of this house because those are my steps. And if I would have died on them, I would have been pissed.
What a way to die on steps. I mean, there's that show called, we started watching that series called The Staircase, the one where the guy finds and like that. From what they gathered from that, she just fell back, but there was like blood spread all over the room and stuff. And it's a real court case. And I'm watching it and like, well, did the guy kill her? Did she fall on the steps? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, I kind of hoping maybe he killed her, because if she actually fell down the steps and caused that much blood, I mean, what were you doing? Like running full bore and launching like it like head for, I mean, you fall down the steps, you get bruised, you get beat up, but like blood spray everywhere. I mean, what did you hit? I mean, were the steps like jumping out and smacking you in the face afterwards? I
had like a blood smear down the steps because the other side of my hip like caught it going down, so there was like blood down my side, and my dad's like, "You're bleeding," and I was like, "No, I'm good. It's my back."
Wow. So are you a little cautious going down those steps now?
I was for like the first 48 hours, and now I'm back to my regular shenanigans.
When she just like slides down on a skateboard,
right?
Or something.
Yeah, it's fine. If that's the way I go, that's the way I go. I guess.
We are glad that you're not terribly hurt. That would make me laugh for at least 10 more minutes.
I know, and then I would have to give you back the crown, and I'm just not willing to do that.
No. So are you typing emails, Tim?
Yes. There's a lot going on right now.
He's firing people.
No, actually, we're getting filming things set up, making sure that everyone has all the right tools in the right place. Yes, but I'm back now.
But this is our time, Tim. You can't ignore our time. I only see you so rarely, Tim.
I know. I've had people like in my work email from like 4:00 this afternoon, and they're like, I have a day job. Stop it.
I know.
Tell them go away.
Yeah.
I told you, I lied to people and said I was on jury duty, and I wasn't lying. I was joking because I just really wanted to watch the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, and
there you go.
People took it seriously. They were like, you have jury duty? I was like, absolutely.
Yes.
I've watched a little bit that started, and I haven't really watched it anymore since. I just usually assume just two people with some problems.
Today was one day, let me tell you. That was a fantastic day.
I wait for the updates on my TikTok feed at the end of the night.
Oh my God! Hey, there was a surprise witness today. I was so for it.
Somebody showed me one of Jason Momoa when he supposedly came on. It was a joke. I think it was a joke, though. It was a video that was a joke. But it was pretty funny. The way he was talking, like, there was another one of the turd thing. Amber, she did it to herself with the whole turd thing. I mean, come on. That's to me, after I saw that, I'm like, well, there's not any more I really need to hear about the trial. So
yeah,
are you reading any cool comments?
Like watching it, it's like, oh, dude, did you hear what happened? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
I'm like just happy that the timing works out, because it's like I'm obsessed with the trial. I will watch it, and then the next week, Hayden Christensen returns to my life. So like,
that's right.
Really works out for me.
Obi-Wan, yes.
Obi-Wan is coming on. I forgot about that.
And like, Hayden's all over my Facebook. It's a great day.
I haven't been reading anything, but I have had some good comics delivered because I finally got my creator copies.
I didn't get my Wolf Hunter comic.
Well, it took them until now to get up to Oregon, so give yourself another 5 days.
No, that's okay. It's not like I paid for it or anything.
Right.
if I don't get it, I guess whatever. So yeah, I think that was one before.
That's a
Now
mediocre level passive aggressiveness. There,
Mhm.
man. You need to
is it a little
up your
bit?
game.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also got an airbrush in the mail, so
A machine?
Yes, and I got to get this unpacked and set up to speed up the painting process quite a bit.
Is it an airbrush with a compressor, or is it both?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Airbrush compressor, and then also, if anyone is interested, Vallejo right now has 31% off on Amazon for a pack of 18.
Oh, really?
What is that?
These are Vallejo air paints. So they're
okay.
the ones that are
They're
pre-thinned.
are they already prepped to go in the air? You don't have to water them down or anything?
Right, yeah. They're already pre-thinned. And Vallejo already makes like excellent quality, like inks, oils, paints. So
okay.
Vallejo,
I feel a dinosaur paint job coming on.
Hi, Vallejo. I could paint a dinosaur. We were actually joking about what now I need to do is get a panel van and get a stencil for a wizard.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
Jose has one. You know that, right?
It's broke down though.
Yeah.
Get it repaired.
Jose does seem like the kind of guy with the wizard van, like blasting Deep Purple or Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, doesn't it? I mean, you can kind of tell.
That would make like half my cousins like so happy.
So we're talking about fantasy. It said
talking
something
about fantasy,
like demons and wizards, and
so that's kind of our general catch-all tagline. But given we have is it Dark Rise is a thing. Actually, wait. Mackenzie, what's the title of your comic again?
Wait. Night Rise.
Night
Rise. Dark.
I'm like, wait, what?
I know. I'm stuck on the horse.
I didn't get he was saying mine, and then I was like, that sounds like mine. And then he looked, and I was like, oh shit, which mine?
Yeah, no. I'm currently stuck on Horus Heresy: Age of Darkness because Warhammer.
That's fair.
Yeah, but we have Night Rise as a thing. Also, we've mentioned the name on some official Silverline stuff, so I think I can talk about it now. But I'm also working on Soul Ascendant, which is our Roman fantasy in space. And I know, Aaron, you also have quite the resume in writing fantasy books that you have recently finished up.
Strangely enough, but it's funny. My fantasy stuff is it's all my own mythology, so I don't think I write anything based on tweaking Roman or Norse mythology. It's all my own, making up crap.
But just that's fantasy. It's great. Cool. Yeah.
I have a friend. It's like every time he talks Spanish, he's like, "Yeah, but why does it have to be like elves and dwarves and crap? Can't we do anything else?" Like he's so tired of. So I try to like, oh yeah. I mean, I like that fantasy stuff too, but I was like, yeah, it is kind of synonymous with fantasy. It's like everything's elves and this stuff, and so I'm like, oh, I know. But
I consider my whole life a fantasy, honestly.
Yeah. It's trying to think if there's any. I read that like Skull Kickers, that was kind of a humorous. I've noticed a lot of fantasy anymore is either political or humorous.
Mm-hmm.
I notice there's not a lot of fantasy books that do straight up like quests and stuff. It's always like some weird catch to it. Like I rarely see one where these people going on a quest to save the kingdom or whatever. Like there was one called Seven to Eternity, I think, and it was an image book.
Yeah.
And it was like these fantasy people are like, transporting this like evil criminal. I'm like, this sounds cool. But then it turned out all the fantasy people, basically fantasy versions of superheroes.
Okay. Seven to Eternity. Is it roughly based off of 310 to Yuma?
I think so. Yeah, the transporting the criminal.
Western,
yeah. And I was just kind of like, okay, yeah, I don't,
On the flop side, I've been enjoying Joe Abercrombie's Age of Madness trilogy, which is fantasy that is entirely political. It's it's Age of Madness. So it's the sequel trilogy to First Law.
Okay, gotcha. I think you mentioned that before.
Yeah, so it's following the kingdom, which is not a metaphor for England.
Yeah.
Going through the Industrial Revolution as magic is kind of falling by the wayside, and some of the lesser lords are rebelling, and the maneuverings of the wizards cult and the different lords and such. So I've been enjoying that.
Well, I know like a lot of Japanese fantasy, like Final Fantasy, they mix a lot of like technology and then magic together. But most Western fantasy kind of stays a lot. The only other one that close to is maybe like Conan type fantasy, high fantasy, but a lot of it is like D&D, which I don't mind, but I have noticed like, oh, I'd almost wish they'd make more comics like that, even in the D&D, but I rarely see comics. Like I actually listened to somebody talk online about why aren't there more fantasy comics? You think this would just be like up there with superhero comics and stuff, but they're just not. I can't quite figure that out either.
Mm-hmm.
So
DC is doing, was it Dark Knight of Steel?
Yes. Yeah.
That's set in like a fantasy setting or whatnot.
Setting, okay.
And I've actually been enjoying what I've seen of that. Having Harley Quinn as an actual jester in Batman's court is great.
Yeah, that well, I mean, even Wonder Woman is technically straight up fantasy more than superhero. Usually when they write it, she can kind of mix between the two. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird because if there's a good fantasy comic, I'll be down to buy it. But man, you really gotta hunt them down to find them.
If you really break everything down, though, like pretty much all those genres really do fall into fantasy.
Yeah, we get into which is something we covered in Full Sail, which is like the idea of the fantastical, which is everything from science fiction to fantasy, and then you have sword and sorcery fantasy and like high fantasy or low fantasy and grades of science fiction. It's like it's a lot of Stan Lee's heroes fall into science fiction because he wanted to have at least some sort of explanation for it. Whereas you look at Dr. Fate, Doctor Strange, there's no real explanation other than magic be as magic do. So those fall under fantasy.
Yeah, because when I watched new Doctor Strange and Doctor Strange again, but Marvel and DC were always like this. I mean, most of the heroes, especially in DC, not so much Marvel but DC, were heroes created in other universe and bought by DC and shoved into the same universe. But like Doctor Strange always seemed weird because he's like, this guy can do anything, and so he's like, shouldn't he be like he kind of almost makes the other superheroes pale in comparison sometimes. And I don't necessarily, I mean, but then Marvel's always done that. They throw everything in. I mean, you have vampires and whatever and all that stuff.
Right.
So.
And we didn't get Moon Knight kicking down Dracula's door looking for his money.
Not yet.
No.
Season 2 is coming.
Yep.
I watched the first 2 episodes of Moon Knight and then never finished it.
The last 2 episodes were my favorite.
Oh, yeah. Moon Knight actually a fun fantasy,
right?
It is like the setup is just Egyptian gods are real, and borrows everything from mythology on the terms of like avatars and all that. So it's actually very much straightforward, a mythological fantasy, and
it was pretty legit.
Yeah, I enjoy it. Yeah. It's a great time. Not trying to get into too much spoiler area. So, but so dealing with are some fantasy comics. Now I'll probably get more into Night Rise, Godlings, and Soul Senate in a bit here, so we can use this as a way to talk about how we created our own sets of fantasy. But we, Jose, your experience working with fantasy, creating, observing, enjoying.
I love fantasy. I think anything fantasy is worth reading, and I don't care who says otherwise. I started off, I played D&D for the first time when I was 12. You know what I mean? We were at my aunt's house, and my cousins were playing, and I sat there and watched them play, and I was like, I want to play this. And so I made them teach me how to play. And then after that, it was like, I think through junior high, I would just read a couple of different fantasy books here and there. And then I found out a friend of mine had some books in his locker in high school, and I killed the Dragonlance Chronicles trilogy in 3 days, like nonstop, just reading the crap out of them. And then I went through the entire Dragonlance run, like every book they have. And then I ran out of stuff to read. And then I found out about Forgotten Realms. And my best friend mentioned to me about the Icewind Dale trilogy. And I finished those in about 4 days. And I think 7 years later, he hit me up and was like, "Hey, by the way, I finally finished book 1 of Icewind Dale." I'm like,
Is that,
yes. Remember the twins.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever read a series called The Myth series by Robert Asprin? No one's ever read that.
No, I kept it like everything I read is pretty much in the same like same world. Like I like for me it was like Dragonlance. So like or not Dragonlance. I played in Dragonlance my first time I ever played. So like I wanted to read all the books. I wanted to know about the different histories, and most of it was like I read Chronicles, and I'm like, who is this Legend of Huma dude? And so like I had to find the book so I can read about him. And so when I had my friends read it, I was like, read this one first. It's going to make a lot more sense.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, minus that, like in regards to like fantasy stuff, like I'm in the process of slowly trying to collect all the advanced Dungeons and Dragons comic books that Dan Dursuma worked on. You know what I mean? I've got a few. I don't have a lot, but I'm also kind of slowly working on compiling the list of issues I need to get. So on top of that, yeah, I love almost anything fantasy. Even if like I wasn't even a big fan of the Lord of the Rings books, just because I hadn't read them. And then I actually saw the movies first. Well, actually, I saw that cartoon, the Hobbit cartoon first. That was weird to me. But then like I saw the movies and like it made more sense. But I love anything like that. Like I mean, my go-to genre is like apocalyptic, but fantasy is right on its tail. It's it's my favorite.
You mean like Mad Max apocalyptic?
Yeah, I absolutely love anything that I can get my hands on. It's like Mad Maxy-esque. If I don't know about it, someone tells me about it, I'm gonna read it.
Did you ever play the Mad Max video game they released?
I actually didn't.
That's worth it. It's cool.
I heard it was pretty awesome. I don't like. I know it's something that I saw, and then when I was like, I couldn't get it at the time. I think I was going to school at the time.
Yeah.
And then I just forgot about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And then most of the time when you get other games and stuff like that, I don't really play them just because of timetables and like.
Well, were you a big fan of the Terminator series because of the post-apocalyptic scenario? Yeah.
Oh yeah, like definitely. Was it Terminator Salvation, the one with Christian Bale? That one was that was one of my favorite because it spent more time in the future than the other ones.
I think I didn't mind Salvation. I watched it once. The ending didn't really stick it with me, but there was a lot of stuff that I liked. I liked them explaining more of the future.
Yeah.
I really liked Dark Fate. No, I know a lot of people didn't.
I thought that was interesting. I mean, that was like, we're going to like change and curve it and go a different angle.
Yeah.
But we're going to do it in a way that kind of makes sense, because then you start breaking into timelines and then like,
Well, you know why he did it that way. Because the rights to Terminator went back to James Cameron.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so the studio owned it for years, and it's not Warner Brothers. Who owns? It's like Paramount. One of the studios. That's why I saw all these Terminator movies. But after Terminator 2, Cameron was not involved in any of them, and then, so the rights eventually got knocked back to James Cameron, and he was like, "Okay, if I'm going to make a Terminator, I'm going to make it a direct sequel to 2, and ignore all the ones."
Right.
And that's exactly what he did. And he had Robert.
James Cameron has the money and the connections to do whatever he wants.
Yeah. Right.
And I really liked Dark Fate. I loved how they took the idea of the liquid Terminator and gave him like an endoskeleton and just took that idea a step further.
Right.
There was a lot of stuff I really liked it, but everyone hated it because they killed John, and I'm like, screw John.
I like that they did that. I mean, that's.
I liked it.
Yeah, spin. But I like that that Ghost Rider was a Terminator. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And he did a really good job. It's one of those things when I watch it, they kind of focused more on Sarah Connor and what her role was. But everyone was so upset they killed John. And I'm like, yeah, but you're dealing with a time travel movie. It's not like they can't go back in time and save him.
Right.
So, I mean, but nobody stuck with it enough, so they're not making a sequel to that. So,
which Terminator movie was the one where the dude that plays Jake Sully in Avatar was
That
there.
was when he's talking
That
about
was Salvation.
Salvation.
That's the one.
Mhm.
That's what I liked that one. I don't know.
Yeah. And that one I kind of, and there was all of them were like they went and then it was false starts. They would always. I consider Dark Fate the third and canon because it came from James Cameron and Terminator's a little bit. If it comes from Cameron because it was his baby, but I did like all the other ones but they kept taking out Sarah Connor and that's and I mean I understand, but they kind of try to put in Sarah Connor's other actors, but it's like but Lyndall Hamilton was Sarah Connor. I mean, you can't really. There's certain roles you can't. They try to put other Terminators in besides Schwarzenegger, and you always have to have him. So, yeah. I personally am just kind of like I just hope they kind of leave Terminator to die.
Just leave it be.
Leave it be. Do something else. I think it's done all it can. I think Dark Fate was enough of that's kind of cool. It didn't go forward with it. There was supposed to be 2 others planned. It didn't connect, so it ended the movie. It ends, technically the way the first 2 ended. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. Just end it.
think honestly, Terminator probably should go the way of like, no way, Alien and Predator went for a while, where it's just forget the movies, just let Dark Horse or 2000 AD get the comic rights for it and do Expanded Universe.
Dark Horse did a great job.
Yeah, they did some really badass stuff for Terminator. I remember,
or not Predator, but Aliens.
Oh yeah.
Wow, there was so much.
I remember one of the better Terminator scenes in the comic was one of the Terminators actually walked across one of the oceans, like the Atlantic Ocean or something. Like I thought that was such a cool concept that he's so. I mean, like the fact like. Yes, he's so on mission that he would just literally walk across the bottom of it and make his way across the bottom of the ocean. I'm like, that's a trip. They did some the aliens. They did some really cool stuff with the aliens, and I saw the trailer for the new Prey. I'm kind of bummed it's not in theaters. It's only on Hulu. But if they stick with the way it looked like she's just straight up like no magic fairy. I'm afraid they're gonna start having to do stuff like in the new Mulan movie. She's like running on walls.
Which one?
But if they don't. What?
What's Prey?
Prey is an actual sequel to it's the newest Predator movie, but it's called Prey.
Oh.
And you can watch a trailer, and it's the Predator actually fighting a Comanche. I think she's a Comanche girl, brave in 17th century.
What?
It looks cool. Yeah, it looks awesome. If
Yeah,
they
it does
stick
look
with,
cool.
I know what I'm doing after the show.
Yeah. And it's a very short trailer, but it's like if they stick with it and make it realistic and have her use her wits, that's going to be a really cool show. The guy who did 10 Cloverfield Lane, which I really like, he directed this.
Ooh,
so
okay.
I'm like, okay, then I have some hopes. This might be pretty cool.
Yes.
Is that the one with the basement?
Yeah.
The one in the basement. That was one of my favorite ones of all the Cloverfields.
Cloverfield also, wrapping back around, is an interesting like example of it's almost like hidden fantasy. Like you almost want to say it's sci-fi, but there's no explanation for it, and that's the point, which makes it fall more to fantasy. Where like this could just be some weird magic, whatever. But the world building exists in the lack of world building.
Nobody liked, there was one they did where they did the space station where I think it was actually turned out to be a pre-equal to the original Cloverfield.
Right.
Like I think, and how like reality kept warping and moving on this spaceship. That was one of I really liked that one. Nobody liked that one. I'm like, this was cool because it's like this guy's arm would fall off and then come alive and he could still control his arm. Even though the arm came off, he could still move it because it had to do with like, probabilities and stuff. That was a really cool. Cloverfield was cool because it did these sort of stories, like you said, it did disconnect the stories world building around this sort of event, but none of the stories were really like none of the people in the stories knew each other. I always thought that was a cool. I like that.
Confused me.
I've not seen it.
If you haven't seen any of them, they're worth it.
Yeah.
What's the one where like the girl gets like taken by what's his face down into like a or like it's like a basement, like a fallout shelter.
That's Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah, that one. I was so like I felt like what happened to the original plot of the movie for that one.
It's this John Goodman acting his butt off for like 2 hours.
Yeah, I was like, what happened with the original plot of the movie?
Yeah, I think it was just, again, I think the way J.J. Abrams is painting that is anyone can come into that Cloverfield universe and tell their own stories in it. So that's what as long as it's kind of within the same storyline, or same universe, they could tell individual stories in it, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because you could watch 10 Cloverfield Lane completely not watching the other ones and totally pretty much understand what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. It's funny. What do you think about fantasy movies, like fantasy TV series? I never thought we'd see stuff like The Witcher stuff look as good as it does.
The Witcher just makes me so happy. And like Witcher is in this weird space because like the books, the games, they're all great, but they're never as good as your head makes it. Like critically, there's issues with everything, but just as a whole, like oh no, this is exactly like the polished level of like the '90s fantasy camp that we got, but like with an attempt to be good.
Yeah, it was. I never got into. I think I watched the first season of Game of Thrones and never got into it. I don't know. I didn't know who to root for, and I came to the point where I thought this guy. I'm like, I thought this guy was in love with that guy. And she's no, this guy's in love with the woman. It's the other guy, and I'm like, okay, I give up, and I just kind of threw it in. What?
You root for the White Walkers to come and wipe everyone out.
Yeah, I watched the first season. I know there were a bunch of seasons. I've heard that they want to make a Conan TV series. If they stick close to Robert E. Howard, I think it would work, but I think it'd be problematic. I don't see traditional Conan working in this political climate.
I
think that would be a lot of problems.
Like OG Conan, like freaking, like you said, Robert E. Howard Conan.
No, it wouldn't.
No way.
Yeah.
So I'm like politically correct them.
Yeah. And then that would kind of ruin it. I know they showed that Lord of the Rings trailer for the new TV series.
Yeah. That one that's kind of the consensus we had at the tournament is that we're more so excited for the Helm Hammerhand anime that's coming out, but we are all still like excited for the Amazon show, but we don't want to talk about it because the Lord of the Rings community online is very toxic.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that.
And do not get too deep into it, but when someone's comment on something is why is elf black, and you have to explain, well, elves don't exist.
Yes. And I just assumed there would be elves from all different skin because depending, like elves in the desert would look like that because of the sunlight. They would just develop
a bare minimum
skin like that.
Look at the freaking player's handbook for Dungeons and Dragons. It tells you that they come in different colors, ranging from this color to this color.
I'm just like, if you're going to do that, why not just make them blue or green or some color that no one has any problem with? You know, and also would kind of make
we'll end up with rainbow color elves.
Yeah, like they would be pretty elves.
God.
Yeah, they I don't know. I kind of wish sometimes they would quit connecting these shows to larger. I think the fact that it's a Lord of the Rings show, I think, could actually be its downfall. If they just did some random fantasy show, no one would care.
Yeah, I think that maybe. I think the fandom maybe it's undoing. It's like Star Wars, where the fandom is its own worst enemy, which I'm sure Mackenzie can relate to. But I think they did the right call with it. Like I like what Star Wars is doing now with the High Republic. We're like, okay, we're done connecting to Skywalker Saga. We're going so far back, and no one cares.
Yeah,
and
I liked Shadow
I have
the Empire
theories.
time. I'm just saying.
I have theories. But we won't get into them yet.
Sure. But I do think that the going back and like, okay, we're doing something about, the Forging of the Rings. We're going to touch on the Second Age, and also it's going to feature a lot more just the Rangers of Numenor, which have been mentioned but haven't really been developed.
So that'd be cool. That's where or Aragorn was. Was he one of the Rangers? Or was he trained by them?
So Aragorn was a Ranger, but this is like several centuries beforehand,
right? Where they came from.
So this is essentially like how the not necessarily the origins, but what made this organization as famed as they were.
Right.
Yeah.
I still House of the Dragon coming out, because they're doing that for like Game of Thrones as well, where they're trying to like
going back to do the Targaryens invading Westeros.
I mean, if they're gonna do any of the families, I mean, at least they're doing Targaryens. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
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 Inbreeding
Yeah.
people.
And I love Matt Smith. I think he was a great choice.
Yes. Matt
Yeah.
Smith is
Wait,
great.
what?
Matt Smith is playing.
Is he with the Mad
Man.
King?
This is before Mad King. This is
I was gonna say.
yeah. This is initial information. I can't remember which one he is,
It's like
but
Demarion or Demonian or
Yeah.
something like that.
yeah, but
I don't know. It's a D. I know that.
yes. My my partner is reading through Blood and Fire right now, the prequel book. So she's excited for it.
I haven't read, like I said, Game of Thrones. Never really. I like
It
when
was
it comes
really
to fantasy.
unfortunate. I wish I could have gotten to Game of Thrones. I like got through season 1, and it was like I pushed through it. I got into it. Season 2, that's when season 8 or whatnot came out, and everybody spoiled how it ended. And I was like, well, I'm not investing my time if everyone's pissed about the ending.
Yeah, that was kind of like the way I saw it. I never. Yeah, I usually take forever, but I don't know, something about. I'm kind of one of those people. If you go fantasy, go all in. I've never been a big fan of like, well, it's medieval times, but there's fantasy elements, but very few far in between. I mean, it's like, okay, you have dragons, so just if you're gonna put dragons in there, just go all in. Have elves, orcs, have the whole thing.
So you're not a fan of low fantasy. You like high fantasy. So like
I like high fantasy. If you're just gonna go straight into it, yeah.
It's like if it goes too high, I'm like really weird. Like if it goes too much, I don't like it. But like if it's like, and this is probably stupid, but like I remember like falling in love with Narnia when I was younger, and it was like that felt like just enough. Like it was like you could connect the realism to everything.
Amazing.
That is good.
I love it.
But I like it all. Like I love low fantasy. I like the romance of the three kingdoms. It's like a normal like battle line, but Guan Yu just ignites his glaive and cleaves someone in half because sure, why not?
Yeah.
But and also like Warhammer, just the most insane like myth fueled fantasy you could find.
Yeah. Warhammer. Well, Warhammer isn't the Warhammer 20? Is it? What's the future one called again?
Warhammer 40,000, which it's more or less sci fantasy.
Isn't it more popular than the old one? Or is the original one still more popular?
So Warhammer 40K was actually original. It was originally Rogue Trader. Then it was the Warhammer 40,000 box set. And then that launched second edition, which blew up. But some people were really into the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings hype. And we're like, well, we want some fantasy stuff. So they made Warhammer Fantasy after that, about the same time as third edition. Warhammer Fantasy
that was weird.
Yeah, Warhammer Fantasy never really blew up. But 40K continued to blow up, and then around 2015 or so, they killed off fantasy altogether, and they launched Age of Sigmar because they wanted to make fantasy play more like 40K, but make it as bonkers, and that has gone well for them. Yeah, so like I'm literally painting double hammer Angel Man for Warhammer Fantasy right now, Age of Sigmar.
Oh, that's cool. So
yeah, and they are there you go.
Yeah, and then Tommy says there's a scary dude behind you. Yeah, hey Tommy, yeah. He who needs his lightsaber. You need to get one of those.
No, my issue is I find him attractive, not scary.
Did you? And on that statement, we go straight into the Silverline Show Tuesday After Hours edition. She said, Mackenzie, just let go of Darth Vader. Let go of him. But you need to get one of those FX.
I have one.
Do you have one? Can you actually fit in his hand or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I just, like I said, I would prefer him not even being in the house with the renovations, but there's just no room with everything, so he got shoved in here. So
as you have people working at a renovation, just have him coming around corners.
Yeah.
No, he's scared so many people on these renovations.
He's also down with the dark size.
Nice.
And with that, yeah.
We're going to the after hours.
I still think my favorite Sith was always Darth Maul, the original one. I just thought he looked like this like cannibal dude.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
so
Darth Vader's
I'm
one of my
like,
favorite.
yeah, I loved. I mean, Darth Vader was, but there was something about him. He was just like the son of cannibalistic, evil headhunter-looking guy. I thought he looked visually cool.
Can you
Was
see
it
that?
Darth Crate?
Yeah.
It was Darth Crate.
Darth
That's
Crate, yes. Yeah. Darth Crate is so good. I kept being like an expanded universe lord. Darth Crate definitely felt like the natural extension to the villain's line, going from the Law of Council to the Law of Many, Law of Two, and then Darth Crate creating the Rule of One. It's just
Oh.
great.
Yeah.
Speaking of fantasy comics, well, not fantasy comics, do you guys read a lot of European fantasy comics at all? Because in Europe, fantasy comics, they have a ton of them.
Yeah, I actually read more European science fiction, but I have read some Euro fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that draws me the most to Euro comics is the color palette, oddly enough. As a writer, it's not so much storytelling as much as I just really appreciate the palettes they work with.
Yeah. They're really, some of the stories are just bonkers. Like that's the thing, is I like some of the fantasy, but they don't write a lot of rules. Like I remember one girl in some book died, and when she died, she split into a bunch of ferrets that ran off. And they just mentioned like one guy's like, what happens? Like, well, they always turn into ferrets and they die. I'm like, okay. Like they'll just mention like, this is just, instead of giving any sort of reason or precursor, they just kind of pull stuff out of thin air. And it's like, yeah, but that's fantasy. I'm like, that's just like,
that's like in Pirates of the Caribbean when that goddess becomes crabs. I feel like it was like, I was like,
yes.
Where did that
Calypso,
come from?
right?
What's it?
Calypso.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's accelerate to crab. But that's the thing that Scott and I had mentioned on the Wednesday show, is that for a lot of times you just need to give the throwaway line. Like if you give too much exposition, the reader puts a book down because they're like, oh god, only Tolkien can do it. But you skip that throwaway line, which is Obadiah Stane saying, Tony Stark built this in a cave, and the guy says, well, Tony Stark. Like, great explanation given.
I mean, the fact that
that's enough.
I mean, that's not. Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it's
did you guys ever read Fire Breather?
I did read that comic, Fire Breather.
Oh.
Was that the one about the kid who was the son of a dragon?
Yeah. And it's
that
like
was...
the running joke in that thing is the mom's always like, I bet you're wondering how you were conceived. And he's like, no, I'm not. But it's like, how the hell?
I remember I think that was Robert
Greater
Kirkman,
Polymorph. Come on, guys.
who did Firestarter.
How are you supposed to know these things?
Yeah, I read some of that comic. Like I said, any fantasy comics I get my hand that had any sort of fantasy element, I would try to read, but there's either some start and don't go, or now they've gotten into almost like the surrealistic fantasy where it's not like, it's almost like that Odyssey comic where they did the one where it's like almost surrealism, like psychedelic stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's a little too far. Yeah, I don't know. I think fantasy can work, but I think you have to have a consistent world or look to it. I mean, I really liked Bone, which I think is considered kind of like the classic fantasy comic right now as far as fantasy comics.
Yeah.
I did collect all the Dark Horse Conan books, which are good because what they were trying to do was they wrote in the back of the graphic novels they were trying to adapt all of Robert E. Howard's Conan stories, but then put them in a chronological order because he never wrote the stories in any sort of order. And so they were trying to discern from his stories like where these took place in Conan's life. And
they had them all over the place. Even like the old comics, they had them like all of a sudden he's in, like, was it Sumeria, and then he's in freaking
a pirate, and then he's and that was the way Robert E. Howard wrote the stories. He would write stories like little snippets of this guy's life. In fact, I think Robert E. Howard even said, like, at one time something to the equivalent of, like, I'm not so much writing Conan as chronicling his adventures. Like, he's this real guy, and I'm chronicling his adventures in, like, this reality, which I thought was a cool concept. And I've always really liked kind of the idea of, I actually,
that's
this
what you're doing
barbarian
with
character. What?
Aren't you doing that with Not?
Yeah, I want to start doing that, writing stories which is individual short stories like Robert E. Howard did it. Lovecraft did it too, but Lovecraft's never featured the same character like Conan did. He had,
there's multiple characters in the same plot essentially.
Does that count
Right.
as fantasy? Some Lovecraftian.
Lovecraft?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it falls under Eldritch horror, which is a type of fantasy. Yeah,
Okay, because
Yeah.
I like I've read everything.
yeah,
Like the
Yeah.
idea of like the mythos and whatnot of Cthulhu just is astounding to me.
Yeah. And he.
also makes a great RPG.
Yeah. So I've
Oh
never
yeah.
played Call of Cthulhu, right? But
Uh,
my understanding is no one wins that game.
No, it
No.
does.
Everyone, but
And I
you
don't think
either
you're
die
supposed
or you
to.
go mad.
There's actual player's guide book, but yeah, we I ran that for a Halloween game, and the band of investigators managed to find the summoning circle and put together how they were to banish the demon. However, in doing so, they ended up breaking the ward around the house, so the creatures on the outside were able to get in. The the rabbi occultist, was able to perform the ritual. The accountant got paralyzed with fear, but was able to hold the tools in. Our Mountie brawler is a Canadian Mountie who would come down to do fisticuffs with demons.
Nice.
Got mauled by a zombie, like a necrotized zombie bear. And,
Interesting.
And the circus strongman who had been shot the day before was fighting a horde of the undead and died and failed his last luck check. So after they finished the ritual to banish the demon, the rabbi looked down, noticed the strongman had stepped into the salt circle and broke the barrier. So they all looked up as the demon just winked and vanished. The rabbi's like, "All right, I'm retiring. I'm done."
Right.
Yeah. It's I know there's this dice game I play called Eldritch Sign, which is like a very simple version.
Yeah.
Of stuff, but yeah, Lovecraft stuff is great. Well, Robert E. Howard, he was friends with Lovecraft, and that was kind of cool because in the back of some of the Conan comics, Dark Horse actually published some of the letters they actually wrote each other.
Mm-hmm.
They had this huge debate of the natural state of man: was it wild or was it domesticated? Mm-hmm. But that's why every once in a while you'd have like these eldritch sort of horrors in Conan because he would put Lovecraft's. I think Lovecraft actually put one of the books or something from Conan in one of his books, like the Silmarillion or something. Like there was some book or something like he would just do little nods to each other's stories all the time. But yeah, I wish there was more. When I grew up in fantasy and in comics, I grew up much more a fan of like Conan, which then translated to He-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of high fantasy adventure. I mean, then we had like shows like The Beastmaster.
Beastmaster scared the crap out of me.
Oh yeah, yeah, and then I remember as a kid, and then it's like
I could not go into my room after that. I would walk to my bedroom, turn the hall light on, walk to my room, reach in, turn the light on.
It's funny too because you watch those and it's like all nudity. I was amazed my mom would let me watch all those like Beastmaster, whatever, and there's like naked chicks running around, and she just didn't even bat an eye. Just didn't even, and I never registered. I just didn't even register about the nudity. I just wanted to see I was into the fantasy and the swords and the animals and Beastmaster is one of the worst. Conan did that too, the original Conan and all that. So I think I was just more exposed to, like, I remember watching the original Ralph Bakshi Fire and Ice, finding that show. I'm like, wow, what is all this cool stuff? So I didn't grow up with Lord of the Rings as much. I really like that stuff, but I've always been more up for like high fantasy. I really liked the Never Ending Story. I read the book. The book was okay. Actually, I know, sorry to most Never Ending Story fans, I like the original movie, Wolfgang Petersen's take on it, because I did read some of the book, and they kind of went. Some of the stuff they did with Sebastian, I'm like, that's a little more Star Wars. Like he goes evil in the book, and then I'm like, okay, that's stupid. I just like the initial premise that you find out that this world could live on in you. It's like, okay, that's a cool concept. But I like fantasy stuff. I do like surreal fantasy a lot, but then I like high fantasy like Conan and stuff. Which actually that's why I like The Witcher, because The Witcher is borderline a little bit. It's like the Lord of the Rings, but it's kind of got that little bit that high fantasy because The Witcher is more kind of like a barbarian or warrior guy,
Yeah.
crafts work, and the horror element, that eldritch horror element, I think is really cool.
Yeah.
With The Witcher, yeah, I really like. There was one other, yeah, but I do remember the green wing things taking the guy, and they turned him into like it was like green slime and bones would fall
Well,
out.
they ate them. They ate
Yeah,
them.
yeah. It was,
That's why they ate people.
and he had the little ferrets and the
Dude, I was
panther and stuff.
100% sure one of those is hiding in my bedroom.
Oh yeah. I
Running
think
into
at the
me.
end, wouldn't they like good? Didn't they like help him out? Like, didn't they kill one of the bad
They
guys to
gave him
help
like a
him or something?
necklace or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. All that cool fan. I mean, Thunder the Barbarian was great. I think that's why I actually like the. I was been getting into watching the Riddick movies again, but I always liked the Riddick movies because he's a big fan of D&D, and I always saw Riddick as basically Conan in space. He's a very much a Conan type character in space. I'm like, okay, that's really cool.
Vin Diesel actually played on like one of the streaming people that do Dungeons and Dragons. He actually played. Was it the last
Witch Hunter?
Yeah. His character. He liked his character so much he made it into a D&D character.
Yeah. He did it on Celebrity D&D with Matt Mercer. I think it was on the Nerd.
Something like that.
Yeah, the Witch Hunter movie wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't his best effort, but it wasn't bad. And I know he wanted to make a franchise out of that. I know there's supposed to be a new Riddick movie. He's been working on it. I would love. What?
He's been working on it forever.
Yeah, but I just think from what I gather, most of the Riddick moves out of his own pocket.
Yeah.
I think that's why it takes so long.
Well, I actually like those. Like ever since Pitch Perfect, or not Pitch Perfect.
Pitch Black.
You know when he was in Pitch Perfect.
Just put Anna Kendrick in Pitch Black. Yeah.
Pitch Black. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, Pitch Black is great. Yeah, I can definitely see where like you can't. There's moments where it wanted to fall apart and the Chronicles of Riddick, but it was cool enough that it held together for me.
Right. It was a huge departure. I remember watching that and being like, at first, like you said, I was like, I didn't like it. But then the more I watch over the years, the more I'm like, okay, well, I really like when they're running across the planet and trying to beat the sunset. That's like the heated, like the sun's going to come. I'm like, okay, that feels very much like the first movie, Chronicles of Riddick. I actually liked the Necromongers. I did like the idea.
I like Go ahead.
I like the idea of like intergalactic empires that just go conquer planets. Like they're just this Genghis Khan type conquerors that they're just conquering because that's what they do. I
like how they made them like extra bad. We're like, we're not here to annex you. We're here to kill all of you because we need your corpses to repopulate.
Yeah.
And I love that they expanded on like in was it in Pitch Black, they didn't really say much other than he was a Furian. You know what I mean? They mentioned it once. Yeah. And then they expanded on it as they went further into the movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What a Furian is and like where they
I need to actually like at least watch a playthrough or play Assault on Dark Athena, the prison breakout.
Fantastic.
Yeah, because apparently it's canon.
Yeah.
I played both of the Riddick games, and I don't remember the storylines. I remember they were good. I liking them. But the movies were I thought were good, and especially in the second movie, you really saw his love for D&D. It's the first movie I think he just played a role. It was the original movie was written by somebody else, and Vin Diesel played the role. But his character was so popular that he's like, well, dude, I could just take this character and run with it.
Yeah,
and I think that's what they let him do. And then he went into his full D&D side and added more, which I think it was kind of a departure a little bit. Because people didn't expect it, but I think over time I was like, okay, this actually kind of works. I love the Necromonger, like the ships, like these huge faces, and it was like, I mean, I thought, okay, this is kind of cool, but it was definitely a departure from like the horror-based movie that Pitch Black was. It is like straight up kind of fantasy, and then he kind of went a little more horror with the Riddick movie, the third one.
Yeah, where they left him on the planet.
Yeah,
it's him. To really kind of combine all the things where it's him, the bounty hunters, the Necromonger, but also I forgot the name of the dark monster, but that.
Yeah. Well, he was supposed to. I read in an interview that the third Riddick was supposed to be Riddick leading the army into like the Underverse, like this world verse, and it was supposed to be this big budget. and the Chronicles of Riddick movie didn't do as well as he'd hoped,
Yeah.
and so we had to kind of divert direction a little bit because he didn't have the money to do what he originally intended, and so he kind of just in the beginning of the third one kind of ended the whole he became king,
Mm-hmm.
and then just went back to the original Riddick, which the way he did, I'm like, yeah, I could totally see that, and I never saw Riddick as wanting to be a king anyways, and so I'm like, the way they did it, I'm like, okay. I mean,
Yeah, it
at
worked
least he
out.
addressed it. He wrote it out that he,
Yeah.
they had this, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. But I know it was supposed to be like he was leading this army or whatever, and that he just didn't have the budget to pull it off.
Yes. All right, we're entering into the second half of the show now, so let's talk a bit about our own fantasy stuff, since we have fantasy comics either out or coming out or in development in some way. So we'll start over with Mackenzie, since I believe yours is.
Oh my God.
Say it
Yes.
right.
Well, yours is the probably the closest to gracing the Silverline Kickstarter page.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not being ambushed by a cat. So talk a
I
bit
know,
about
I am.
talk a bit about Nightrise, the world building that went there, and what kind of fantasy elements you wanted to include and what you liked about it.
Well, I always love fantasy, and I realize that's very vague to say, Lily. And she's gonna be the special guest,
She is.
And I'm very selective of what I like, and I can't even tell you most of the time what I like and what I don't like. I know what I like and I know what I don't like when I see it.
Yeah.
Right.
So, for the love of Liza, so when I went into building Nightrise, I kind of got an idea for a plot, and then tried to go with things that I think we talked about this before. Like, I had been sick and I had been playing different video games of that. I'm gonna say time frame, like even though it's fantasy, it would be like the 16th, 17th century type deal that it was kind of meshed together. And I knew I wanted to do something with that. And once I started building and kind of doodling out the characters, and when I approach something, I kind of go, okay, what can I do to make this different? What's been done and works versus what hasn't worked? What can someone look at mine and know that it's my story? So that's kind of what I went with, building my characters and getting my unique characters down, and then fitting them into the storyline, and then building from there and figuring out the rules of the world and what works and what doesn't work. And a lot of the times, to make the characters believable, always write a backstory for each of them, and it could be anything that comes to mind. I could write down their favorite color. I just build and build and build. And like I said, sometimes I reference other, I reference other fantasy shows or stories that I've seen, or I might just go, no, I want to build my own today. Like, I just want to this sounds great and this sounds great, and mesh them together and go from there. So I'm a very, very sporadic world builder.
Sure.
Because some days I'm like, okay, I'm gonna look up all different types of lizards on planet Earth to make my dragon. And other days I'm just like, no, this is like a water-breathing dragon.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sporadic, but it works.
Definitely. Yeah. So also there is definitely like a darker aesthetic to Nightrise. Especially we've seen the baddies and the way Quentin is doing their armor is very much. Classic.
Well,
dark
like
fantasy
Nightrise, I knew immediately, like, I wanted it to be dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to do that, with other careers, like definitely with writing scripts. I tend to be really looked at for like animated films and definitely children's things and whatnot. And but I like writing dark. It's just, for whatever reason, with scripts that took off first, and it's really hard to work that in when you're known for children's things. So like when it came to comics, I knew I wanted to go darker, and necessarily not but it's not like it's X-rated or R-rated or anything, but I knew the theme. I wanted to go darker with it. I wanted to look at it and it be like, something that I would read. And I tend to like darker characters and darker themes when it comes to that sort of things.
Definitely. So with the initial concept, obviously we don't have the preview in front of us yet.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen some sample pages, and you have a walking whale.
Yep.
Yes. So when you're coming up the concept for Nightrise, what kind of popped to you first, or did anything pop to you first? Was you just have an idea this seems cool, I'm going to build a story around it, or did you have something you want to tell?
Oh, so for Nightrise, I kind of like I said, I knew the time frame, and I know again, I know it's a fantasy world, it doesn't have a time frame, but I knew I wanted something of that nature. I knew
Sure.
I wanted the houses with the straw roofs and the wooden barriers and that sort of thing. I knew my setting, I knew what I wanted. Necessarily I didn't have everything perfect, but I was this is what I love. I'd love to have this. And I wanted to kind of get my characters down. So my little assistant here that is still over here but has stopped bugging me. I actually was just trying to draw up with something, so I actually drew her as a person. And because you feed off what's around you.
Yes.
And that turned into Hale, who I knew when I drew him out, I didn't really. I love my Lily, but her colors weren't mixing, and I was I'd love to have him be a lynx or something, and I didn't know if that'd be possible. I think I played around for a while with him being a lion, but he can't. I felt like that has been done so much. I wanted to try something different, and then I drew. Then I knew right off the bat, I knew about Harlow, and I was I want to do a dark elf, and I was the contrast of these two would be amazing, and I had a while ago, and then obviously Justice came about as our human, because I always want, that human attachment. But I went through different animals that I had doodled up over the years of so many, I have, deer mixed with foxes and obviously whales with legs and all this, and I kind of played around with which one would fit into this world, but also which one is unique enough that when someone looks at this again, they'd be yes, this is Nightrise.
Mm-hmm.
And the whale there, Kelby, I don't know, he just fit, and we had to change around his colors a little bit so he wouldn't clash. But yeah, I don't know when it starts coming together. Yeah. Oh yeah, I see it. And definitely when Quentin started drawing them out, I got a better feel for them. So I mean, it was Kelby wasn't exactly how I imagined, but as soon as, because I had him more kind of reptilian whale, and that was something that Quentin was do you care if I change this around? And I was absolutely. And I like how he turned out, because he's kind of and I don't want to say the comic relief, but he brings, with us having such a dark theme and dark setting and all that, he adds a little lightness to the page, I feel like. So we're able to use him in situations because he growls and he protects them, but he adds something. So I'm always seeing if puzzle pieces fit. So it's always a matter of doodling and sampling and going, oh, this piece doesn't work, this piece does. So it's like a puzzle. Just have to figure it out. The characters and the story know what will work, and you kind of just have to listen to them.
Absolutely. And do you have any favorite parts of working on Nightrise, or anything that you've written and you're oh, this is going to be the best?
There were, so I'll be honest with you, I'm really disappointed. I don't want to say disappointed. I literally sat down, and how sometimes I hate to say writer's block, because I don't feel I get because I feel like writers get writer's block in different ways, and some people don't go like, oh, you don't get writer's block. I get so overwhelmed with choices, I don't know what to do, and that's how I get writer's block, because I have too many ideas, and I don't know which one fits, and I can't hear my characters, how I call it, because I know my characters that I've created are telling me what they want on the page, and I can't hear them. So, I really sat down with Nightrise, and once I had those characters, I mean, I wrote a beginning to an end. Like, I knew it. Like, I sat down, and in like it did take me 2 days, just because there was so much, and I wanted to get it right, and I edited, but like literally in 2 days, I had a story from beginning to end. And that's when Roland looked at it, and he goes, "We're only doing 4 issues," and broke it down to just the 4. But I'm telling you, I mean, I could probably do at least 24 with like the story I wrote. So like that one's really easy. It's not always that easy, but like I knew as soon as I got this, and don't get me wrong, when I had the whole idea, but then when I was even writing issue 1, I know Scott and I went back and forth, because I had like and I want to say like an intro to show like what had happened, and he was like, no, let's cut this out and save it for later, or not have it at all. And it's like I had planned for that, and you make those small changes, but it didn't affect the bigger story. It just affected like that issue of how to storytell. So I can't say for certain what my favorite part is, because like I don't know, I sat down and I wrote that entire thing, and I was just like so happy that it like flowed like that. And it sounds so stupid, but how one of the big things, and you went to Full Sail, and when everyone always says kill your darlings when editing things, and I can't stand killing my darlings. And I cut it sounds so stupid. He has nothing to do with the plot whatsoever. But my tiger wolf got cut out of the story, and he got added back into like the first page. We saw Quentin sketching in I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And like, I am just thrilled that tiger wolf got back onto the page.
Nice.
Like, it has nothing to do with the story. I'm just like so thrilled.
Yeah, I remember that was one next to the fire. The guy next to the fire.
Yeah, I was just so happy that Tiger Wolf got back into that story. He has nothing to do with it, but I was like, "There's my Tiger Wolf."
He makes an appearance.
Yeah.
It's like like I said, it's so weird, because again, I always think of, I got to sit in a seminar with one of the writers of The Little Mermaid, and he talked about how like for Flounder wasn't supposed to be the companion for Ariel. It was supposed to be a dolphin. And you see the dolphin. He was so upset about it. So they let him animate have the dolphin in it for Under the Sea for 2 seconds. The dolphin swims by. And that was good, because he got to see his dolphin. But no one else knew it, and everyone fell in love with it. That's like how I feel about this tiger wolf, and like so many of my darlings that I've had to kill. I'm like, how can I sneak them back in?
Put them in a little intro.
Whenever I get my darlings back into my script, that's like my favorite part.
Oh yeah. So I'll take a little bit here to talk about Soul Ascendant, and then we'll finish off with Aaron talking about Goblins, because people can go buy that right now, so they should do that after the show. But I feel like the takeaway from that, though, was people should back all of the issues of Nightrise, because they're all Mackenzie's favorite.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. All my best work.
They're all her darlings.
Some of them.
Yeah. So Soul Ascendant was an idea that I had rattling around, because I am a fan of Destiny, and I like the mixing of fantasy and essentially low science fiction.
Yeah.
The idea of like very plausible science that's like would be attainable within the next 100 years or so. And so, but I like having just off the walls, cracked out ideas for stuff. So
I would never guess that from you.
Right. So looking at
they weren't here when we came up with that like mushroom skater whatever we did. That was the most random ass thing.
I still have that outline.
I know. We're gonna make it someday. It's gonna be Silverline's bestseller.
Yeah, it'll be dope. That'll be great.
It will. I'm
Yes.
telling you.
But so looking at a world where like faster than light travel is not plausible, but I want to have crazy superpowered space fights. And also I'm a fan of history and ancient cultures. So my thought was like, well, Rome worshipped the planets. And like the planets were gods. What if the planets were actually gods? So ended up creating the idea of, and looking at the deification of mortals was another idea I borrowed from Roman mythology. The idea that the planets would deify humans from their populations to be like demigods that to serve their purpose.
Okay.
And you end up creating like kind of like this fragmented human empire where, you know, Earth is very much still the Roman Republic. In the first issue, we end up meeting the first among equals, the Princeps Majoris and the Council as they decide what to do with this new hero Invictus. The population on Jupiter is the most powerful economically and politically because that they have Jove, the god above gods, who's just like, my people are just better at everything because I say they are.
Right, because they are.
Dealing with also spoilers. But
dealing with spoilers.
Yeah, dealing with spoilers, but dealing with some of the other gods who have like multiple facets to them that I could work into how that would present in a human avatar of them, or if they would even choose to use a human avatar instead, find somebody to break the rules themselves and potentially set up a conflict. Part of the world building was setting up the rules of how magic or goddom would work in this near future, whatever it is. And something that happens in a lot of mythologies, but especially in political and legal everything is the idea of gods having dominions. So much so, like in Roman mythology, where you have like the law of dominion, where gods cannot intercept or act on other gods' dominion, otherwise, they essentially get god sued.
God sued.
That's canon, people. Just let you know.
If I get a letter ever sued by God, I'm going to be very upset. Yes. And I'm going to countersue because I fell down a flight of steps for no reason.
Yes. But kind of taking it up to the next step, like, well, what's better than gods? Well, what demigods fighting and like commanding fleets of humans? Because that's visually appealing and not at all stressful on the artist.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So the initial offset of this, and kind of what I like was most interested by when I was like, what made my little nerd brain tingle, was the fact that the sun god Sol can't really have a dominion because we can't live on the sun; it's incompatible with life. So he has to pick. So when Terra, the god of Earth, goes to sleep, he has to pick a mortal from Earth to be his ascendant. And and so it ends up breaking the some of these laws, and the Princeps Majoris and some of the other gods are like, well, that's a little weird. I don't like that. And he is like, well, guys, there's a greater issue. There's a reason I needed to do this. So dealing with kind of having, kind of what I heard about earlier, but the politicking of it all. But having these super insanely powerful demigods and gods and space lasers, but still having it come down to people not being able to do the right politicking because they're like, well, this is the way it should be done. He's like, well, calm down. Let me be your hero for like 2 seconds.
So this is 4 issues, right? Is it a
one complete
story, or is it open ended?
So yeah, it's 1 4-issue arc, dealing with kind of a conspiracy amongst the gods, and Sol having to piece together / fight out what's going on with that. Also, we deal with Roman zombies, which people didn't know. Rome had its own set of zombie mythology, which is very fun to deal with.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
I didn't know that, but I like it already.
Yes. But yeah, it's 4 issues, and kind of like Mackenzie said, where once I had the idea and I put it down, I'm like, oh, that's like the entire arc done, and I have room for much more. So hopefully Nightrise and Soul Ascendant do well enough that like, hey, let's do another volume. Yes. Because I mean, I love Wolf Hunter, and I'm very glad that people bought it, and I hope they continue to enjoy issues 2 and 3. But Soul Ascendant is very much you can tell all of my brain juice went into it. I feel like.
Ew.
Yes. There are panels with brain juice in it, so if you enjoy that.
Well, okay, good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not just a metaphor. This is literally brain juice in the book. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. You get to watch Vulcan, God of the Forge, smash some zombies with his giant hammer, and there may be brain juice involved.
I mean, it's Vulcan. Cool. Why wouldn't there be?
Yeah. But ideally, I think it'd be kind of fun to not to get into like the issue that like mythology professors already deal with, which is like Roman supremacy, where the fact that we have so much documentation on Roman mythology, but not a whole lot on like other cultures that like that Roman mythology kind of and Greek mythology kind of dictate a lot of like discourse when it comes to mythology. But I think it'd be kind of fun to have the bring in Egyptian mythology and Norse mythology and even like maybe Chinese mythology in some way. And like, if I was to do a follow-up, the idea would be like, well, what if the Norse gods were from a different solar system? And so that's why you pictured them as raiders coming in, and then it'd be essentially the Roman gods having to defend the solar system against Viking raiders from a different solar system or something like that.
Right, and instead of horned helmets, they actually have horns.
Yes.
So is this something you're doing in your comic, or is this an idea for?
This is an idea for if I do a follow-up. This initial one is very Roman. It's very internal politics. A god is doing something they're not supposed to, and another god has died as a result. So someone else broke the law to try and fix that, and everyone else isn't happy with him. Except for a few people who are like, I can make some gains off this. I'm going to sponsor this.
Yeah.
And then chaos, and you get to watch some stuff, and but
brain juice.
Yes.
Brain juice is important.
Yeah, brain juice is important. That's maybe should if I ever bring in Bacchus, I'll have him with some brain juice. Yeah.
So how far is the first issue along?
The first issue was fully written. It's being penciled. I'm not sure. I think it might also be. I'm not sure if the penciler is also inking it. But we have first couple pages, I believe, are arted. I'm not sure. I think we're on the look for a colorist at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I'm working on bounce between stuff. I took on another job doing copywriting, so between that, I'm trying to get issue 2 written.
Yeah,
helping people copyright.
Yeah. I'm writing web marketing for a HVAC company.
Oh, really?
In addition to the J job, in addition to making comics, in addition to making video content.
In addition to not sleeping, Tim.
Sleeping's
it's bad.
So do you have any other stories? Do you have Wolf Hunter in this story? These are 2 stories that you've written so far?
Yeah, these are 2 stories I've written so far for Silverline. I do have, if people hump down my LinkedIn, I do have links to some previous publications. Not too much fantasy. I do have a science fiction piece, which it's kind of Lovecraftian. It's a person finding a unfathomable vessel at the bottom of the Black Sea and falling in love with it as the water pressure breaks their suit.
That actually sounds kind of cool.
You
need to make sure you put the links for those.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's a quick read, but I had fun with it, and it's weird writing from the first person of someone actively having mental break from reality.
And that's only just a short story.
Yeah.
Do you sell any of your stuff in a store or anything?
No. So my other stuff has all been published in journals.
Okay.
So that's all other people's property essentially. I'm maintaining the rights to the story, but the actual like publication, I could republish it if I wanted to, but all my short story and stuff goes through essentially journals or academic competitions.
Interesting. So have you written other comics before Wolf Hunter and this one?
No. Yeah, these
Okay.
are my first foray into comics. Yeah.
Okay, I thought you did. Maybe I guess I was wrong. Okay, I know that.
Yeah. Before this, I've been short fiction and sketch writing, but not now getting into comics. Being a comic fan for literal decades.
Yeah, get into it. Do you like writing? Do you write full scripts for people?
For comics, yes. Yeah. The Marvel style. I feel like it works best if you are in an very set collaborative environment where like you and the artist are talking like regularly.
Yeah, like in the same room or something.
Yes, yeah. But in these kind of situations where like it might be months before I hear back from the artist, I'm like, I'm just gonna send you everything.
Yeah.
Tell me if you want to make a change.
Yeah. But Wes, the writer, he's very kind of like, whatever you want to do. He's
very accommodating.
Yeah. I will say, as a submissions editor, the one thing I don't understand is people who write a script that is somehow both but neither. Where you're like, all right, here's page 1, it's full script. Page 2, it's a sentence. Page 3, it's a paragraph. Page 4, full script.
Yeah.
I was like,
page
no
5,
one's going to know what
words.
no one's going to do this. I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
It's not. We won't be accepted this at the moment. It doesn't fit our tone.
Oh man, it's funny. I've actually been starting to. Yeah, when I redid my Goblins, I'd already done it, so I was redoing the book. So I was just going off what I'd written and changing it all to as I saw fit. But now that I've thought about writing new comics, now I'm trying to decide, well, do I want to just storyboard it, or do I want to write a script for myself? Or I don't know. So I'm trying to figure out how to do what to do.
I feel like putting it on your memory can go either way for just working like with yourself. Like if you're the one who's drawing it, like you already know the idea, but depending on like how long it takes you to like get back to the page, you might come back and like, man, where the hell was I?
Well, not only that, it also just running out of it. It was supposed to be 24. Like sometimes you just start thumbnailing it out and start going. Pretty soon you realize, well, crap, I'm in the middle of the story and I got like 4 pages left because I ran out of room.
Yeah.
So usually scripting kind of helps a little bit with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for me, it sounds like the most hoity-toity, whatever. But for me, the Marvel script is my outline where like I'll do like the bullet point breakdown, kind of like you would for like a novel series or a film, where you do like the beat by beat breaks. And then I break that up into issues, and then the issue I turn into a Marvel script as like my issue outline. I can make adjustments there, and then I go on full script that. But yeah.
See, I just when I write my beginning in that, like I'll do it all out, then I'll be like, okay, by this page I need to hit this plot line.
There you go. Yeah.
And by this I need to hit this, but the rest, as long as I get A to B and B to C,
so
don't know what happens in the middle.
You still have kind of like your major beats, your big 3, but it's just that stuff in between. Yeah. I knew. Yeah. I mean, that's still pretty common. Like they're like there's stuff with thought to that. What's weird is we get someone who's like, man, I have this really good idea for a turning point, but I don't know what happens or what happens after it. I'm like, is that even a story?
I like when people like come up to you, you're like a writer or something, and be like, listen, I have this great idea and it's this, but you can build around it and then we can like share the profits or whatnot. I'm like, this sounds like me doing all the work, and I have my own ideas that I have not written yet.
You should totally write a story about my life. It's crazy.
Yeah, I remember my favorite was some guy I worked at a place, and he's like, dude, I got an idea for a comic book. And of course, they always have an idea. Like, I always think it's funny that you're a writer. Yeah, so I don't have any ideas. Yeah. I'm looking for ideas, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, I got this guy that controls fire, and this guy controls ice. And I'm like, okay, like, I'm done with that. Yeah, I'm done with that before it's even like, yeah. But it's funny because they always tell you like their story, like you write my story, it's going to be amazing. And I'm like, I have my own stories. Oh, well, you know.
But it's
I
not
felt
gonna be
I felt
amazing.
really bad the one time because I had a friend of mine that I met while I was interning in Los Angeles come up to me and go like, "Hey, like I wanna." Now he came up to me like, not he's a writer too, so he's like, "I just want to talk through the story with you because I have this idea and like I just need someone to bounce ideas off of and whatnot." And he started to throw out the idea, and he was like, "But I don't know what's going to happen here and what's not here." And I don't know what it was, but what he was like, what he was laying down, I was picking up, and I was like, "Oh my god, if you do it like this," and by like the end of the conversation, I had the whole thing filled in, and then he went, "Well, you just took my story and you did it better than me, so here is my notes. I want nothing to do with it. I'm gonna go write something else." I was like, "Ooh, sorry."
Well, that's kind of the thing about telling other people about your story. Yeah.
That's it.
But it was like literally, like Tim said, he had like a turning point, and he had no idea characters. He had no idea how they were gonna get there. He wanted to kind of bounce ideas off. I thought of the whole thing, and he was like, "Just take it."
Strangely enough, have any of you or Tim ever collaborated with another writer to write the same story?
Yeah.
It's because I've noticed
very different. Yeah. It happens more so. Well, especially working like in freaking writing like sketch, writing sketch comedy stuff. Like that's literally like the kind of the concept of it. It's like you and a bunch of other people are just like throwing ideas at a chalkboard, seeing what sticks, and then you're like, all right, we're going to the local theater to perform this, I guess.
Because
I have a really hard time. I really do.
Yeah.
I can do it
because
but
I usually write my story, and as I'm writing my story, I start to develop through lines for these characters of what the event's going to happen later, and then the other person will come in and rewrite all my stuff. A lot of times, make it worse, or sometimes make it better. But it feels very weird to rip apart a script, because to rip apart a script, you have to rip apart so much of it because it's panel by panel. So it's I can't just rewrite a paragraph. I have to rip up all these panels and rewrite this sort of complete section because the panels aren't going to flow together. And so that gets more annoying. But it's weird. I've had that before where people have worked with people and they come in and rewrite my stuff, and you realize the other person is not a writer or is not very good at writing. And how do you explain
you have to have like two people that have the same creative flame, and like that's very hard to get. You get it sometimes, but it's just very hard because sometimes, like I have a colleague that, and now he doesn't write comics, but anytime I run a script by him, I'm like, "Hey, I wrote this feature film." Da 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 da. He, he always wants to change it into a TV script because that's how his brain works.
Right.
And I had to learn, like, I can't run this by him because he's going to want it this way. And it's not that he's wrong. It's just that our thought processes are different. So you kind of have to find someone that definitely matches the same creative flame as you.
Or at least have like someone who did enough whippets in like the mid 2000s that when like someone hears an idea, they're immediately like, this is weird, I want to. It's like the idea that like, or what the process that I found like the most success with is in the like developmental stage for collaborations. Like when we're doing our craft episode where, I come in like, all right, skateboarding mushrooms. And McKinney's like, yes, you're on something. I'm into it. He loves the garden gnome.
Yeah.
And just go with it. Well, it's sometimes I've noticed a sign of usually the sign of a beginning writer is somebody who over-explains in their dialogue. And I've seen that with a lot of independent comics. Yeah, where they're like explaining, and I tried to explain the one. It's like if somebody says, in real life, if somebody's going to the store, that's like, I'm going to go to the store. But in their story, they'd be like, well, I'm going to get in the car, turn the key on, start the engine, go to the store, and go down the aisle 14 and grab it. It's like, yeah, you don't need all of that. Dialogue's the hardest to write, and a lot of people try to. I think a lot of writers get nervous and not going to communicate everything, so they over communicate in the dialogue, and that immediately just bores the crap out of people. It just gets boring and people just turn off.
And speaking of being a writer and doing it to successfully complete a series, Aaron, why don't you take like the last 12 minutes here to tell us all about Godlings and sort of your elements and working in fantasy there.
My fantasy, oh man. Well, here I can. Here, let me share my screen so you guys.
He's got visual aids.
Of course, I got visual aids. Yeah, there's my stuff. So it's an issue format now, and I am done with the whole thing. I am making a graphic novel out of it,
Yeah.
and I'm working on getting that. I have some formatting issues and stuff, but
Weren't you on the fence about whether or not you wanted to make it hardback or not?
I'd like to eventually make a hardback. It's just cost, straight up cost. It's
Gotcha.
expensive. I mean, doing the paperback is like $30 for a paperback because it's 300 pages. So doing it hardback would be, yeah, it'd be expensive. It would be a very much like I print like 3 and it'd be a one-off thing. And I'd have to find somebody to do it. And I don't even know if you can actually do even small print runs in hardback. I don't think you can, but I'm not sure. So
Right.
yeah, it's just about these. I think I can get a bit these 3 gods. The middle one is god of lightning, and then Doom, the one with the club, is a god of the. I call it the warrior spirit, but he's just kind of a warrior. And then Crystal is the god of towering rock and stone. I created this story in high school, and basically, and I'll just stop sharing the thing. The idea was just like, well, what if you had gods who didn't want to be gods? They didn't want to do that. Because everybody in every story, like everybody wants to be a god. I'm like, yeah, but what if you had gods who didn't want to do that? I don't want to be a god. I don't want the responsibility of taking care of a universe and running things and making things. And so I made them teenage gods. And I just started with the question. And like, well, teenagers are always rebelling against their parents. So what if you had these 3 teenage gods that just left? No other reason. They just didn't want to. They didn't want to be gods. They didn't want to do that. They wanted to go have fun and basically take like their parents' car out in the run. And in doing so, they inadvertently cause a rebellion, which kills thousands of people. And that's oh, thank you, Ryan. Thank you. And that's so the fantasy part comes in later because the story is kind of the first 5 issues kind of tell one story, then something dramatic happens in issue 5, and then the story kind of, I don't know if it resets itself. You'd have to read it to kind of find out. And then that's more where my fantasy elements came in. No spoilers. But my god's a little more sci-fi, whatever. But as far as fantasy, this is stuff is just made up out of my head. It's not based on any mythology, human mythology. It's not based on Greek gods or Roman. It's just, I mean, they're just basically these sort of beings who have developed a master of molecular reorganization. They can control things on a molecular level. And if you can do that, you basically can become gods through science. And that's exactly what happened. That's what they did. They were gods of their own making. And so they just kind of ended up making a universe. There's reasons why that happened. And then became these sort of caretakers of the universe they made. So, but then I also talk a little bit about life starting on a planet and how that's kind of where sort of the fantasy element comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're just teenage gods, not based on anything. I like doing weird designs. I do have mythologies about how the gods are created, the school, so a little bit of the politics, whatnot. That's written into the story, but just enough. It's a personal tale, but the main god's a god of lightning, and he's supposed to be like a living lightning bolt. So yeah, in fact, in one of the scenes in the story, he actually is holding some fruit and he lights it on fire because he's a lightning bolt, and
he's a human Pikachu.
He is, and none of my fantasy stories to have no humans in it. I don't like to write about Earth or humans. Earth is not even a concept. I just because that way I can talk about higher concepts, philosophical ideas, not have to worry about like, well, what about these humans? Like, they don't exist. I don't care.
Right.
I don't want to get into human politics. I don't want to deal with any human, social issues or any that, and none of that. So it's all just completely written out of my story.
Humans are gone.
For politicking and religious strife, you should check out Soul Ascendant.
Yeah. That's mine. Mine is not that way, and it's more of a personal story of what the main god is Boomer, what he goes through. He ends up wanting to be free, and it's kind of my philosophical take of what freedom is. What that actually means to be free. And there's philosophy in it. My minor in college is philosophy, so I put some philosophy. stuff in it. So I push your brain a little bit. Fate versus Free Will is one of my favorite. I don't try to overpower it, but I do put some philosophical arguments because I've never seen comics do that, like take on a philosophical argument straight on. So I'm like, fine, I'm gonna do it myself because I like talking about that crap. So that's mine. But yeah, so the original story was that the original back in high school, the gods come down to Earth, and it was supposed to be none of the gods. You can't reveal yourself to human beings because in the original story, the idea is reveal yourself to human beings that there are gods that exist. Humans will quit striving and quit trying to do better because if they know gods are there, it could do stuff for them. They're just going to turn around and start worshiping the gods. In other words, you can't rule society like as a god if they know that you're ruling them, because then they're just going to stop doing everything and ask for favors from you. So you have to keep hidden. And once the teenagers came down and revealed themselves, they had to literally destroy Earth and start over again. So these kids' weekend getaway destroyed all of Earth. I'm really big on like just ultimate destruction and sort of like haphazard. And my original one like was kind of comedy. You had like gods of like styrofoam and gods of like there were like Shinto. There were gods of everything. And then years later in college, I decided to go back at that story and expand it. And the original story was 5 issues. And then I watched Neon Genesis Evangelion, and I started thinking, well, what would happen if the original ending I had was different? And what if I did a story dealing with that? And then I wrote out of that, 7 more issues after that dealing with it. So yeah. And then I ended it. There'll be no more. It's so if you go to my store and get it, it's 12 issues. It's one book. I will put it in the one book. There's no sequels to it. There's no sequels planned. It's a one thing. No universe building. None of that. It's its own little thing. People have asked me if I want to do more, and I'm like, nah. If you read the story, you might understand why. But it's no. Yeah. So I have other stuff. But yeah, it's part. The idea. I've always liked the idea in fantasy that like you've talked, Tim, like science from advanced races would look like magic to us. So technology will look like magic, and I always like that idea. Like it's not really magic, you just don't understand it, so it looks like magic. And the same thing here. So yeah. So, but I do have it all posted on Webtoons. But then you could also buy it, hit support me. You can buy it off my store, and then like I said, I was going to split the original graphic novel into 3, but I actually found that it's actually cheaper to buy it as 1 book than 3 books. I found that weird, but it's actually true. So I'm like, well, fine. It was always meant to be 1 book. It was never meant to even be split into 12 issues. I did that just to start to disseminate it into the world so people can see little bits of it. But it was always written to be 1 book because there's like actual chapter breaks, like chapter 2, chapter in the book. It's written in that. So
nice.
Yeah. So
we're coming up at the end here. Jose, any ending thoughts? Your own experience with fantasy? Anything you want to jump into the conversation with?
Just that, I mean, Aaron has, his own fantasy, his own world, and
and I live in my own world too.
Yeah, he lives in his own world.
I was gonna say Jose lives in his own little fantasy that he's actually the favorite compared to,
Listen,
Queen Mackenzie.
I held the title for quite some time.
Yeah, and you couldn't hold it against a little girl.
Yeah, well, okay. I'm a nice guy. Just like, I mean, if someone doesn't read fantasy, they should at least give it a try. Like, I mean, the idea, it helped for me because I was able to read like fantasy books, and like it's a form of escape, just like comic books, just like any other thing, role playing or whatever. It's just a form of escape, and sometimes like just as people, we need that escape. And so I know for some people it's like, oh, I like more mystery stuff, or I like like crime novels. I personally love noir stuff, but like fantasy is my chance to get away and like see fantastic things. You know what I mean?
I love Darth Vader.
Yes, you love Darth Vader. That is a fantasy that will never go away. So yeah, just if you haven't tried it, give it a try. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. We got some besides Night Rise. Don't we have in your is fantasy? I thought we had some other fantasy comics coming out. Well, that Beyond the Stars is kind of fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of funny when I saw that. I'm like, oh, it's kind of funny. It's kind of like it's space.
What's that bear one? Isn't that fantasy?
Yeah, it's more like Winnie the Pooh, but it is.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, Winnie the Pooh is high fantasy, in that it's as a Winnie the Pooh is actually a shaman, and
oh God,
yeah.
It's
but
cool.
I'm gonna go back to holding Darth Vader's hand now.
But yeah. Beyond the Stars got kind of something like saw. I'm like, well, it's kind of like space Spartans and space Greeks. Interesting,
Right?
Yeah.
That was like the first thing I thought about when I saw it. When I saw the artwork from it.
Yeah,
Like, that's cool.
So I'm gonna go from that to space Romans, like then eventually we'll have to deal with the space Trojan War, where they where one of the space Romans steals one of their wives, and they have to invade my universe.
I remember reading this sci-fi book that I can't remember what it was called. My friend borrowed it, and it was about these advanced humans that were recreating the Trojan War on Mars.
Yeah,
and I was like, why? And I don't remember
Why?
even from the story why they were doing it.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, were they bored? Like, was it just something goofy to do? I mean,
yeah.
and like they kind of retold the Trojan War, but it's supposed to take place on Mars. And then by the end of it, there were like a bunch of aliens attacking, and they'd broken out of the Trojan War. They're going to attack the gods, and I was like, huh,
Yeah.
okay.
They have the
So
horse?
I don't know if they had. I kept trying to remember.
Yes.
It's like they kept replaying the. I don't know if they were studying the war. It's been a while. I mean, but there were like 3 different storylines going through the book or whatever. My friend really liked it. I've always been much more when it comes to fantasy. I like the individual quest. I've
Mhm.
never been a big fan of like massive armies fighting each other. That doesn't do much
Yeah.
for
Like
me. But,
was it the Shannara books, right?
yeah,
Sword of Shannara, I think, something like that.
yeah, like individual, like like a band of heroes out fighting.
Yeah.
Exploring dungeons and stuff. That was always my favorite.
I always
I
like
feel
when
like
there's
the Aragon
tales of
series,
woe.
even though it didn't get picked up, did that really well. Like I know it did have battles, but like
Yeah.
it was all about like the character and the world developing more than
Yeah.
the actual battles.
Well, Conan was like the classic.
People will know that once
Yeah.
Disney actually does something with the rights that they bought.
Yes.
Did they buy the rights to Aragorn?
Yeah, they bought the rights like I'm gonna say like 8 years ago.
As like it was ages
Yeah.
ago.
My favorite characters stories is like individuals going on a quest. It does have outreaching like consequences, but of course, Ari Salvatore
Yeah.
in the Gist books.
Yeah, I've always liked that kind of like the mighty warrior against the world of dragons and dungeons and stuff.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
I'm telling
Dungeons and
you, you need
Dragons.
to read. If you haven't yet, read the Icewind Dale trilogy. That is amazing.
So good.
Did you guys ever watch the old D&D cartoon, the 80s deal?
You know I did.
Yeah.
What?
You know I did.
Did you ever hear the ending episode? Because they actually did write an episode to end it.
Yeah, they. As far as I know, they didn't make it home. Right? Am I wrong?
Well, some did. The thing was,
Lived with PTSD.
well, the funny thing is, the one thing that was like really cool in it, and you can find somebody actually took the script and animated it.
That's
So you
cool.
can actually go on YouTube and watch the final episode of this guy. And he did a good job animating it. But the thing was really cool is they came to like the edge of the world, the fantasy world. And when they looked underneath it, it was like this whole piece of land that was held up by these huge columns that stretched into nothing.
Huh.
Like the whole world was like a huge tabletop.
That feels like something out of Digimon.
But it was like the whole world was supposed to be one huge tabletop. Get it?
Yeah.
Like table.
I feel
I was like, that is a cool concept. I remember a song like there's actually an edge to the world and they found it.
That does feel like Digimon.
I feel like that's the end to Lost.
Is that what they did at the end of Lost?
Yeah.
But this was all done in the 80s before Lost and the digit crap, whatever she's talking about. And
wow.
I'm gonna send Agumon after your ass.
Okay, I could take him. He's
That's-
probably
that's
really small. Just
Isn't
kick
that
him.
the baby T-Rex looking one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was my favorite.
Naturally.
Yeah, but I remember that was. I was like, oh, that because they wrote it. Because they finally were going to be canceled, and they wrote the script, and I never got a chance to animate it. But they did end it, and some of them, like I think the Wizard Boys stayed in the world and grew older, and I think some others stayed, but a lot of them went back. They had a choice whether they go back, and some stayed and some went back, which I thought was kind of a cool concept.
Interesting.
I feel I knew that.
Because the wizard guy, I think, fell in love with somebody from that world and stayed and had a family
He
with
fell
her.
in
and
love with
stuff.
Uni.
Uni,
You
yeah,
get it twisted.
unicorn. But yeah, did you ever get into Thunder the Barbarian? Speaking of post-apocalyptic stuff,
Yes. I
that
love
was
Thundar.
that was such.
Thundar
I mean, even
was
the intro
amazing.
to that cartoon is they can never do that intro now. I mean, they show the Earth being split in half and the moon, and it's like, good God, yeah, and, like demons and stuff.
As far as like the far end of like high fantasy goes, like the reason I love Age of Sigmar so much, coming from Warhammer Fantasy, it is connected lore wise. The Emperor of Mankind, Warhammer Fantasy, gets so religious he goes on a pilgrimage, finds his god's hammer, becomes his god, and then has a fight with the ever chosen of the demons on the highest peak on the world. They fight so hard the world explodes.
That's for Age of Sigmar?
Yeah, that's it. And then and then the Emperor of the Humans becomes Sigmar, goes flying through space, where he gets picked up by a dragon who's like, "Hey, I created 8 new worlds. Do you want to be their god?" He's like, "Yes, actually, I'd like to be someone's god." And then the ever chosen of the demons comes back through a hell portal. He's like, "I'm going to wreck your stuff." Cue Age of Sigmar.
Friday the 13th, or not Friday the 13th. No, yeah, Friday the 13th.
Yeah,
Jason went out to
Jason
space.
Voorhees, yeah, essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Archeon Ever Chosen is the Jason Voorhees of the Warhammer world.
Yeah, I was like, Jason got frozen, then he went to space, then he came back, then he drowned. I was like, you lost me.
Yep.
Well, I just assumed he was indestructible. Wasn't Jason supposed to be like indestructible? Pretty much.
It was like Jaws. He always came back.
Yeah.
You killed the shark every movie, and the shark still returned.
As long as kids do naughty stuff in the forest, he will come back.
That's right.
Yeah. And because I remember, it got more and more ridiculous because if you can't ever defeat him, you know, there should be some way to at least stop him. And usually in the movies, they find some way to stop him.
Here's a great idea. Just leave the camp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. Since he never seems to go out and kill beyond the camp, just don't go in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know. I remember, it was funny. Well, I remember watching a making of Halloween, and I never seen Halloween, and I still haven't, which is weird. I don't know why.
That's weird.
Considering it's like such a classic, I just need to sit down and I don't know why. But I remember them saying like they never put blood in the original Halloween movie. There was no blood. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. And so when they made Friday the 13th, they're like, well, we're going to take the same thing as kind of like the Halloween with the guy in the mask, but it's all going to be all blood and all sex. And so they just went completely raunchy.
Now
And after Friday, I'm like, oh.
The boy. The boy would know.
What?
The boy would know. My son loves Halloween.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting. Like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. So they were like, yeah, we're gonna like the idea of doing like the gory kills and stuff kind of started with Friday the 13th. It started as that sort of slasher horror.
Yeah.
So
I do appreciate this is a subject for another day. We'll probably get close in more to horror like a later date. But my favorite thing is kind of like the grindhouse style, like murder movies, like the Belko Experiment. Like, all right, these people are just here to die. That's the movie.
Well, did you ever
like
see that
Cabin
World
in
War
the
II
Woods.
one? What was the World War II when they just made it recently? It's Overlord.
Yeah.
What about the zombies or something like that?
Yes, that was a fun
awesome.
one. Yeah,
and the production value is
that's
not
like Wolfenstein. I mean, they should have just named that Wolfenstein.
It's pretty much Wolfenstein.
Yeah.
I saw it with my friends, and he does not do horror movies at all. So like, it's not even scary. It's just bloody and gory. It's a grindhouse movie, and he's like, "Man, I'm not vibing. I'm not having a good time."
About Saw. I don't feel like Saw is like scary. I think it's just like.
I thought the original Saw was an interesting concept. You didn't know which guy in the room was the guy.
Yeah.
And then later on, they started, and then I didn't watch anything after the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I watched on, and we actually in Full Sail you have your portfolio classes where you have to present an idea or a concept or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like our capstones. Where we had to like defend our writing for whatever. I don't know if they still do that or if that was just like something they tried out when I was going through. But
maybe I blocked it out.
But yeah, in our portfolio one, we had to write essentially a film proposal and like create like what our these would be. And
I did Darkwing Duck.
Okay, yeah, and our tentpole was we have the franchise for Saw, and but the thing that like the entire group kind of stuck with the fact that Saw was actually the whole reason why Jigsaw was doing that is because he had died from cancer, and he felt like he wasn't grateful enough, and that no one in life was really had empathy for what he's going through, and he does been very bitter. And then he realized that as he got better, he wasn't grateful. So he got a bunch of people who are on the in terrible situations or on the verge of dying, and he said like if they survive this, it would make their life 1,000 times better, but both materially and also they'll be grateful for life.
The Wonder Years episode?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. So I thought that was kind of an interesting idea, and so we were like, well, what if we were to redo style? We'd get Gary Oldman because you get Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman.
Yeah, and we made it a story about PTSD where he was a war vet who came back and realized that he was so bitter at life and that everyone was so bitter at him because no one's really feeling like wars are necessary at the moment. And he's like, and even if he agrees with that, there's no like no one's trying to help him through dealing with PTSD. And so essentially he'd set up something similar where people would be put through traumatic situations where at the end they would realize that there are people who've gone through that same situation and that you should be understanding of people who've gone through that.
Yeah.
And so that actually ended up getting the highest marks in the class just because we did a film that was both incredibly brutal and violent, but also had like a moral behind it.
A lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is funny. I'm more like supernatural horror, the slasher flicks. I said I saw the first Saw. Yeah. I know is because just so I know, is the Jigsaw character supposed to be a guy behind it, or is it like a possessed doll, or?
It's a guy. So yeah, I kind of spoiled it, but I don't know if
he uses the doll as like
he uses the doll as his avatar situation. But I don't. Do you care about spoilers for the Saw franchise?
No, not really.
Yeah, Jigsaw had died of cancer, essentially, and this was his way of creating
Didn't he not die until like the fourth movie?
He died. He's dying, and then in the fourth movie, he actually died.
The second one.
Yeah. So timeline wise, he died before the second one. He died between 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
3 was a prequel ish.
Yeah.
And then 4 was actual like the in between where he saw him dying. But he had died of cancer, and this was his way of and realized that he'd become so bitter at everything, but he wanted to teach people to be thankful for living. So it's the other thing where
and ironically be better people.
Yeah. So he realized by putting he wanted to torture people in the way that he felt he had been tortured, and then hope that they become better than he was.
I thought they all died. They never died from his puzzles. They survived.
So
that's the point. He always makes puzzles where everyone can make it out. Like if you actually like work together or like are smart and don't think about yourself, everyone could get out. But
that's the thing. It's like
no one ever does.
Yeah, he designs puzzles where he says like you chose to die here. Like you could have had empathy, you could have worked together, but you chose to die.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't. There's a few. That was one I didn't. I think only the horror one. I watched Evil Dead just because of Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
Everyone should watch Evil Dead because of Bruce Campbell.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't even played the new
TV
game.
Show.
I want to play the new
game.
The
game looks super fun.
Yeah, I want to try to talk my friends into like I get 4 people. I'm like, we should play the Evil Dead game.
If they make like a Steam party pack, we should just get it for the channel, and we'll have like a Silverline Evil Dead night.
It's funny. I had
awesome.
Had a friend who watched the new Doctor Strange movie, and I was like, "Well, yeah." She's like, "Well, it seems like more horrific." And well, yeah, it's because of Sam Raimi.
Yes.
And
at the middle there, Sam Raimi was like, "By the way, this is my movie."
Yeah, and it's strangely enough. I was like, "Well, have you ever watched The Evil Dead?" She's like, "Oh no." I'm like, "You should really watch him." She's like, "Nah, not really." I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "Come on."
It's like Ed Wood, right? The movie Ed Wood.
Yeah.
He went to that church group to get funding for his horror movie.
Yep. I was like, I had fun explaining to my friend that like the Bruce Campbell bit.
Wait, is that how I go get funding for my movie?
Yes.
Yeah, evidently.
Yeah.
I go and I take my say, here's my Kickstarter, fund my movie.
Yeah,
Yes.
so in the movie,
Just tell him that's what Jesus
it
would
has
do.
Johnny Depp in it, by the
You're
way. But in the movie Ed Wood, he goes to a church, and the church wants to make this like movie that it's like a movie slash documentary about like God and the Bible and stuff. He's like, oh yeah, I can do that. Takes the money and finishes his horror movie. He's like, oh yeah, this is. And while they're filming, the pastor's there, and they're like, why is this person dressed like a vampire? He's like, oh, it's all part of the story. It's all part of the story. And just like lies his way around. And then in order to get the money, his like entire crew, which includes like Bill Murray, who plays this gay guy, right? And they all have to get baptized.
I
It's
don't know
so
this movie at
funny.
all.
Oh, it's. I mean, I don't want to say it's old, but it's old.
Well, a lot of countries like Canada and stuff will actually give funding to independent movie projects.
What's the name of this movie
Ed Wood.
Edward,
now?
yeah.
Edward.
That's
He's the one who did.
It's the last movie Bela Lugosi played in.
Yeah, wasn't that
Yeah,
the
I
one?
do-
Like, did he do from space, like Plan 9 from Outer Space? Wasn't that
Yeah,
Ed Wood's?
Ed Wood was the one that created
Yep.
that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. The reason why every art film seems to come from France is because the French Art Commission are like, hey, you're making a movie, cool, here's $1 million.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, most countries do that. We unfortunately we do not.
We do it state by state. If you're filming in Georgia, they're a little more handy with it, but
Yeah, that's why everything is filmed in Georgia. If you watch to the end of the
Yeah.
credits, it's always like that Georgia peach.
Yep.
Yep.
But if you're an independent filmmaker, France is great. French Canada also great. If they speak France, you're probably good. If they speak French, they're probably good.
If you're an
I think also-
independent movie maker watching this, go fund my film, please.
There you go. Australia also does a lot of funding for small film
Hey,
productions.
go fund Mackenzie's film. It is not Plan 9 from Outer Space.
No.
No,
Yeah.
that's much better. It's like
Yes.
it's like a horror teddy bear film.
Yeah,
From Outer Space.
Just the most
Yes.
disgusting, vile thing about kids and teddy.
with carrier
What?
pigeons.
Watch it like your numbers go up. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, right.
Click.
It has a lot. What did you say? You just have to say there's boobs in it.
Yep.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
put boobs in it. That's usually in some
Boobs and
capacity.
you're good.
I've actually thought about that in my Goblins, like I don't have make an actual cover with boobs on it where I'm like explaining the story and he's like well that sounds okay, then show him the cover with the boobs sold,
Right,
it's
and
like,
every time you hashtag, it's like all sci-fi, gods, blah blah blah, and then there's
then
somebody's boobs.
and then it
That's
just
like-
I remember I had a friend who actually when he did Instagram he used to do the hashtag kitties and puppies. Yeah, I'm like, does your thing is like no kitties and puppies, but everybody searches for them, so it always comes up in their feed when they
I always
my
like
God.
when I post personal stuff, like stuff that I draw just on my own,
Yeah.
or you know what I mean. It's always comic book artists, like my tools I use for hashtags, and
Yeah.
always at the end, the last one is always bird.
bird.
Yeah, just bird. It's comes from an argument or a conversation I had with my best friend where he's like, dude, how come you didn't tag that it was a bird in there? I was like, fine, I'm gonna tag bird in everything from now on.
There you go.
It's been 3 years
Yeah.
straight.
Perfect.
Well,
It has
where-
been 2 hours.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we've
And
got to cut
12
it for tonight.
minutes.
I know we got to cut it for tonight, but we'll be back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Talking about a subject which I've lost. Still will announce it next week. Live again on this channel. Well, we won't be here live. Another team will be here live Wednesday, and another team after that will be live on Sunday,
Right.
Eastern time both days for Wednesday.
And the
Lamb
next time you
Sunday.
see my face, I will have Hayden Christensen return to me.
Yes.
So
this
she'll be
we'll talk-
squealing and running around in the background.
Probably the first hour of the show, we'll be talking about Obi-Wan.
Right.
Which
So I have to
I'm-
watch
I'm-
it.
Yes.
Oh, and hopefully, Pete will have had the baby.
Yes.
Oh yeah, isn't his wife in labor or something?
Yes,
Yes. We might have child Silverline.
that's right.
Yes.
Baby
So-
Silverline.
I keep trying to get him to name the baby Jose, but so far
Yes.
Tanya's not feeling it.
Yeah.
Always time for surprises.
I know.
That's
right?
true.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have been that's our fun show on Tuesday. We have go by Godlings and get ready to back Night Rise and have Soul Send It rattling someone in your brain. So when you
Oh,
see,
and thank you for
basically-
backing the sci-fi extravaganza.
yes, thank you for
Yeah.
backing us. That you got that is now on its way to the printer, pending final changes to the documentation. But Obsoletes, Beyond the Stars, and Cray will be in your mailboxes here soon.
And you can find my Godlings book at humphreysillustration.bigcartel.com. Last name HUMPHRES. That's my store.
There you go.
And I have 2 kids' books in there too, so it's not just that.
And you can find me on Google. I have managed to beat the SEO game, so when you type in Tim TK, my socials are now first to pop up. It's no longer Tim Takahashi of ESPN fame. Take that, Tim.
That's right. My name always comes up. As long as you spell my last name right, like I always pop up first because the last name spells so differently.
There you go.
So, okay. I guess, do we say that make mine Silverline? Make mine Silverline.
Make mine
Silverline.
Right.
Okay.
Everyone.
Make mine Silverline.
Silverline, make it. Make the silver.
Make
the silver.
That's
Silver the
my
line.
hashtag from now on.
Yes.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.